Hello everyone, welcome. I'm Tilley, and this is Recruitment Selection HN2130, and today we're looking at Unit 9, which is Selection. So, we've come through the process of figuring out all the potential people we can recruit to our pool of applicants. We've done some narrowing of the pool through various selection methods, including things like testing and interviews. And now we're at the point where we're ready to make a decision. So we need, for example, to say, of the three people that we are most considering, this is the one we're going to select. So the critical question to be asked here, and the critical question to be answered is, how do we make a selection? Okay, all of the things we've done to date in terms of the screening process have been what we call predictive. In other words, we're trying to determine which candidate is most likely to be suitable for the position. We're predicting the future based on some amount of information that we have. We have all of these predictive inputs. For example, we look at the resume, we look at the job application, we look at the interview. We have all of those inputs. And based on each of those inputs, we can make a better decision with regards to whether someone is more suitable than someone else. In this unit, we're going to be looking specifically at the various issues of decision making, particularly from the point of view of subjective decision making, which is kind of a gut feeling that this is the person that I'd like to hire, versus a more objective approach where we say, okay, using a bunch of statistical tools, we can determine which one we should hire. Let's look at some of the key learning objectives for this unit. First, we're going to demonstrate an understanding of the complexity of decision making in the employee selection process. We're also going to demonstrate an understanding of the distinction between judgmental versus statistical decision making, and some combination between the two. We're going to demonstrate an understanding of the advantages and disadvantages of various decision making methods. We're going to demonstrate an understanding of the issues involved in the decision making processes. We're going to explain how selection decisions are made. We're going to discuss different ways of combining predictors, and we're going to discuss the steps to take once the selection decision has been made. The first issue is really the context in which we're making the decision. Let's look at it. We've gone through a very comprehensive, time-consuming process of a number of screening processes. Here we are now, and we have to make some decision. We've got some pressures on us. If we think about it, we've got time pressures on us. We need to make a decision quickly. So that kind of curtails or affects how much logic we apply to the situation. We also have situations where sometimes we've got some candidates, they may not be the best, but we need to fill the position quickly. This is called satisficing, which is getting someone who's good enough but not necessarily the best. Satisficing. And sometimes, rather than selecting candidates for a specific job, employers select candidates for the organization. How does the organizational fit work? If it's really good, let's make the decision based on that versus the job. And that can cause some conflict. And organizations often, and most times, and rightly so, have to promote from within. So if there's someone who's capable of doing the job already within the organization, the promotion process will favor them as opposed to bringing someone in new. And that could affect their decision process. So if we recognize that decision making is challenging due to all of those reasons, what can we do in order to make it as good as we possibly can? And the rest of this unit is looking at using methodologies to make it as good as we possibly can in order to make better quality decisions. If we think about how we can improve the selection process, we'll just look at this slide. One of the key things we want to be able to do is use only valid predictors. Do the predictor that we're using actually predict? And how well does it predict? That's a key question. Use systematic approaches. Again, systematic approaches are more objective than a subjective type of gut feeling approach. So we should use subjective measures. Keep the procedures transparent. It's very important that people clearly see the process we use and the fact that the process was fair. Audit selection systems periodically. And again, just because we've done it that way for years doesn't mean it's right. What we should always do is reevaluate our system. I think it's best to be able to look at predictors from a point of view of they're either extremely subjective, which means that they're very judgment based, or extremely objective, meaning that they use statistical tools. Most measures fall somewhere in between. In other words, they're often called composite measures, which take into a certain amount of subjective information and take into account a certain amount of objective information. The material here will talk about different types of varying subjective and varying objective measures. The gist of it is that we often combine the two in order to be able to get a good decision. And our job is to know what's subjective, what's objective, and what components of each and how those components should be weighed in order to get that best decision process. So the best way to do this is by the use of an example. So let's assume that we are a human resource consultant and we've developed a recruitment strategy and recruited 120 applicants. Through good screening procedures, the numbers were reduced to 20. There are only 3 openings at the present time. So what we've seen is we started out with 120 applicants, the pool size. We've narrowed it down using various processes to 20. There are 3 openings. So if we look at what we call the selection ratio is the measure of how many people are going to be considered versus how many jobs there are. So in this case, it's 20 people being considered for 3 jobs. So we got a selection ratio of basically 1 in 6. Following your recommendation, the company uses weighted application blanks, background checks, cognitive ability tests, structured interviews, and physical fitness test. A medical exam will be required after the candidate is offered a job. Keep in mind that human rights regulations say that we can't get medical tests done until, we can't ask for them to be done, until after a job offer has been made, a conditional job offer. So what we assume now is we've gone out and we've collected a bunch of data based on interviews and weighted application blanks and so on from these individuals. And let us assume, for the sake of this example, that there are 5 individuals who are in the running: Alfred, Beatrice, Charles, Dexter, and Edith. We have and are using 5 tools or 5 types of scoring systems in which to evaluate them. We're going to use the weighted application blanks, the background information, the cognitive ability test, the structured interview, and the physical fitness test. What we've done is we have assigned certain points to these tests, and the applicants have done the tests and gotten certain scores. Table B that you're looking at here shows you the scores that each of the candidates received on each of the tests. Now, so what we need to be able to do then is to evaluate this table using some methodology in order to make a decision on whether we should pick Alfred, Beatrice, Charles, Dexter, or Edith. First, let's use pure judgment. Pure judgment means we're going to assess the data using just a kind of a rough overview. Here we got this table B in front of us, and we see, for example, Alfred got 40 on the weighted application blank, 9 in the background, 110 on cognitive ability, 15 on the structured interview, and 9 on physical fitness. Well, if you compare all the rest of the people to Alfred seemed to have scored higher in weighted application blanks, in background, cognitive ability. In the structured interview, he wasn't the highest, but he was still fairly high. And the physical fitness, no, he wasn't as highest in the physical fitness. If we look at Beatrice got a 37, a 7, a 98, an 18, and a 10. If we look at all the rest and we look at them and we say, okay, which one do you think is best? On average, based on this, we're going to make a decision. So let's say that I'm the pure judgment person and I'm just going to make this on judgment. I think that background is very, very important. That's just me personally. Because background is very important and he scored higher on all the rest of them, I think Alfred is a better candidate. That's an example of a pure judgment approach. Using a multiple regression analysis, we can define a very statistically based decision-making process. Let's take, for example, a look at Table A and B. And in Table A, you'll notice that we have weights assigned to the various predictors. So weighted application blank got a weight of 0.2, background 0.2, cognitive ability 0.3, structured interview 0.15, and physical fitness 0.15. If you add up all the weights, you'll get a 1. and you'll see 0.2, 0.2, 0.3, 0.15, and 0.15 equals 1. In other words, that's the whole package. All 5 of these elements are being considered. And cognitibility at 0.3 is weighted highest, followed by background weighted application blanks, followed by structural interview and physical fitness. So all we're doing is we're taking the score that each one gets in terms of multiple regression, each individual gets, and we're multiplying it by that weight. Yet another statistical method is called the multiple cutoff score. The multiple cutoff score is probably the easiest one. All we do is we assign a cutoff score. Let's take a look at Table A. In Table A, the cutoff score for weighted application blank is 30. For background, 7. For cognitive ability, 100. For structured interview is 10. For physical fitness is 10. So this means a person has to at least score that amount or they're not considered. Now, we can do that for each one. So let's take a look at the scores we got. Okay, Alfred got a 40 on weighted application blank. The cutoff score is 38, so Alfred is good. He has exceeded the cutoff score. In other words, he's done better on his weighted application blank than our minimum allowed. He's got a 9 in terms of background. Our cutoff is 7, so again, he's above the cutoff, meaning that he's better than the cutoff score. That's good. In cognitive ability, he scored 110. The cutoff, according to our statistical cutoff point, is 100. So 110 is better than 100, so he's fine there. In terms of structured interview, he scored 15, and the cutoff score is 10, so he certainly scored above the cutoff score. In terms of physical fitness, he scored a 9, but the cutoff score was 10. What we can suggest is Alfred is good at all the other predictors, but physical fitness, he did not exceed the minimum score on that, and he would normally be exempted from any further consideration because he did not meet that cutoff. The next type of statistical indicator is called the multiple hurdle method. Now, the multiple hurdle method is very similar to the cutoff score, but the trick is on this one is that each applicant has to pass the minimum cutoff for each predictor in turn before being assessed on the next predictor. So we will look at the predictors, ask, did you exceed the minimum? If you did not, you don't proceed any further. Okay, so let's take a look at Alfred on this one right here. And again, he scored a 40 on weighted application blank. The cutoff was 38. He's good. He scored a 9 on background. The cutoff was 8. He scored 110 on cognitive ability. The cutoff was 100. He scored 15 on the structure interview. The cutoff was 10. In terms of physical fitness, he scored a 9, but the cutoff was 10. So when we hit the physical fitness, he does not pass that, and we would not consider him past that point. Now, if we take a look at Beatrice scored a 47 on the weighted application blank, and the cutoff score was 38. She didn't pass the cutoff score, and based on our analysis then, at that point, since she did not get the minimum cutoff score for that, she would be out of consideration for the job. So essentially, what we're looking at with the multiple hurdle method is we have a number of hurdles to get over. Anytime you lose one, that jeopardizes your ability to do the overall job, and as a result, you will be no longer considered for the position. Well, that's a quick review of Unit 9, and as I say, Unit 9, making that selection decision, involves that statistical approach and that subjective approach. The trick is being able to manage the two and making good decisions so that any decision you make is based on evidence, and that evidence will bear out to say if we predict that the employee will be good, the employee turns out to be good. If you have any questions, please email or contact me, and I will get back to you as fast as I can. Thanks so much.